indecision is a chronic difficulty in making decisions. It stalls progress, creates uncertainty, and erodes confidence among team members. Indecision is different from thoughtful deliberation or careful decision-making. Rather, it is a chronic inability to make decisions, even when plenty of information is available. Indecision can manifest as perpetual second-guessing, avoidance of responsibility, or excessive consultation with others, often leading to delays and missed opportunities. Contrary to indecision, decisiveness is generally praised as a hallmark of effective leadership. While it's true that being overly impulsive can lead to poor outcomes, decisiveness should not be confused with impulsivity. Effective decisiveness combines speed with accuracy, enabling leaders to make well-considered decisions effectively. Leaders who are decisive are often better able to navigate complex situations because they are willing to make a commitment and take action. Factors that can significantly impact the course. Indecision can be triggered by many factors, each with its own cognitive underpinnings. The first factor that can trigger indecision is justification requirement. When people are asked to justify their decisions, they may become indecisive due to the anticipated scrutiny. The need to rationalize a decision puts additional cognitive load on the decision maker. Leaders may fear that a wrong decision could not only lead to bad outcomes, but also damage their reputation, hence the avoidance. The second factor is similar options. When options are closely matched in terms of benefits and drawbacks, making a decision becomes difficult. This is often termed analysis paralysis. The brain finds it challenging to weigh similar options against each other, making the decision-making processes cumbersome. Imagine you've conducted multiple rounds of interviews and finally narrowed your list of candidates to 2. In this scenario, one candidate impresses you with her skills, experience, and cultural fit, while the other falls short on several fronts. The decision here feels almost instinctual. You choose the candidate who clearly stands out, feeling confident in your choice and ready to justify it to any stakeholders. Let's look at another scenario where both applicants offer compelling credentials. Both are equally talented, bring unique skills to the table, and would seamlessly integrate into your team's culture. This makes the decision-making process exponentially more difficult. Why? It's because the similarity in attractiveness between the 2 candidates muddies the water, making it difficult to justify your final choice either to yourself or to others. You may find yourself postponing the job offer, holding out for a hypothetical perfect candidate who may or may not appear. This delay can be risky, potentially resulting in the loss of both exceptional candidates who may accept offers elsewhere. If similar options are the reason of your indecision, you can use 2 strategies to help your decision-making. First, acknowledge the costs. It's important to understand and explicitly acknowledge the costs associated with indecision. This could range from the loss of top talent to the time and resources spent in the prolonged hiring process. Second, focus on suitability, not comparison. Instead of getting stuck in the trap of comparing 2 excellent candidates, shift your focus towards evaluating how each candidate fits the unique needs and challenges of the role. This perspective change can provide a more objective foundation for your decision. The third factor that triggers indecision is overwhelm from multiple options. A phenomenon known as choice paralysis can happen when people are presented with too many options. The more options one has to evaluate, the more complex the decision-making process becomes. The brain's working memory has a limited capacity and can only handle so much information at once. When you are faced with an aisle of similar products, your brain has to process the similarities and differences between them, evaluating value based on price, brand reputation, features, and so on. This activity engages the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for decision-making and problem-solving. When the cognitive load becomes too much, the prefrontal cortex can essentially become overheated, causing you to freeze and fail to make a decision. The choice paralysis can be further compounded by the fear of making a suboptimal choice, what psychologists often refer to as fear of missing out. Each option you don't choose represents a path not taken, and that can induce anxiety. This fear can be rooted in loss aversion we've learned before. Our brain weighs losses more heavily than the equivalent gains, making the risk of a wrong choice seem especially daunting. Having too many options and too much information can make it difficult, not easier, to make a decision. Recall information bias, which is our tendency to seek additional information when it does not influence decisions. While the pursuit of more information and data can create an illusion of being in control, it often muddies the water. More information is not always better. Imagine you are selecting a restaurant for dinner. If your list has 3 options, the decision seems manageable. You can quickly weigh the pros and cons. But what if you had 20 restaurants to choose from? The process suddenly becomes a daunting exercise in comparison and evaluation, susceptible to choice paralysis. Dating apps present us with a seemingly endless stream of potential partners, each swipe opening a door to a different future. While this abundance appears advantageous, it often leads to choice paralysis, a stage where you feel overwhelmed and struggle to make any decision at all. This can erode your emotional investment in forming a meaningful relationship, as the endless options make it difficult to fully invest emotionally. If you find yourself struggling to make a decision due to an overwhelming number of options, here are some strategies that can help you with making decisions. First, categorize options. Divide the available options into categories based on certain criteria, such as impact, feasibility, or relevance. This makes the decision-making process more manageable by reducing cognitive load. Second, set criteria and weight them. Establish a set of criteria that are critical to the decision and assign weights to them. This will help you objectively evaluate options and can make the decision more transparent and easier to justify to stakeholders. Third, set a deadline. Introducing a clear, non-negotiable deadline into the equation imposes a boundary on the time available for deliberation. With a deadline, the luxury of endless pondering is removed. This creates a sense of urgency that can counteract the inertia that often accompanies complex decisions. Knowing that a decision must be made by a certain point sharpens the mental faculties, filtering out less relevant options and zeroing in on the most viable ones. Moreover, 3 biases contribute to indecision: omission bias, status quo bias, and confirmation bias. Can you recall those 3 biases? Omission bias refers to the tendency to favor inaction over action. In leadership, omission bias can manifest as avoiding making necessary but unpopular decisions, such as layoffs or restructuring, because doing nothing seems less risky. Status quo bias favors maintaining the current state of affairs over change. Leaders with a status quo bias may avoid making decisions that could change existing systems or dynamics, even if change is necessary for growth or improvement. Confirmation bias is our tendency to seek information that confirms our pre-existing beliefs and to ignore information that challenges them. In the context of decision-making, leaders may avoid decisions that contradict their existing viewpoints, thereby missing opportunities for innovation or problem-solving. When a leader's indecision is wedded into incompetence and indifference, their organization usually descends into disarray. The triad of indecision, incompetence, and indifference can be lethal. At the scale of national governance, an example is the handling of the Hurricane Katrina disaster in 2005. Authorities had plenty of advanced warnings pointing to the severity of the impending hurricane. Meteorologists sounded the alarm, indicating that Katrina would be a cataclysmic event requiring immediate action. Moreover, considerable resources were available at city, state, and federal levels. Those resources could have been mobilized to protect citizens and infrastructure, to evacuate those in the path of the storm, and rapid response efforts for the aftermath. Despite the information and resources available, the government decision-making machinery ground to a near halt. The resources that could have been made a difference remained untapped or deployed too late, leaving communities vulnerable and isolated when they needed leadership the most. The consequences were dire. Neighborhoods submerged, thousands left stranded, and most tragically, the loss of human lives. This serves as a cautionary tale, a stark reminder that leaders must strive to be decisive, competent, and empathetic, especially when the stakes are monumentally high. Failure to do so can result in irreversible damage. There are also individual differences in indecision. Some people are more indecisive than others. They adhere to hierarchical structures and do not deviate from established norms. For them, the absence of guidelines is akin to a ship lost in the storm, tossed by the waves of uncertainty until it finds the safety of a directive. For others, the absence of explicit rules or guidelines is not a barrier for action, but rather an invitation to innovate, adapt, and exercise judgment. They see ambiguity not as a hindrance, but as a space for creative problem-solving and initiative. An example is Ted Roosevelt's involvement in the Great Coal Strike in 1902. In that year, coal mining came to a screeching halt due to a strike that shook the very core of American industry. Caught in the deadlock were the United Mine Workers, the largest union of mine workers at that time, and a coalition of railroad magnates and mine owners. Conventional wisdom and several advisors cautioned President Roosevelt against intervening. They believed that in the absence of a clear constitutional guidance for intervention, the default stance for a president should be inaction. The underlying principle was simple. If the rule book does not say go, then the answer must be stop. But Ted Roosevelt was not deterred by a lack of explicit instructions. Drawing inspiration from Abraham Lincoln's philosophy that a U.S. president serves as the steward of the people, not the servant of Congress, Roosevelt redefined presidential power. For him, the absence of rulebook was an implicit license to act. He argued that his fundamental obligation was to do whatever the needs of the people demand, unless the Constitution or the laws explicitly forbid him to do it. Roosevelt's approach was not just a deviation from the standard playbook, it was a shift that prioritized human need over bureaucratic red tape. This story serves as an important lesson for leaders at all levels. Decisions must often be made in murky waters where the rule books are silent and the guidelines are gray. Under those circumstances, Roosevelt's decisive approach offers a template. Consider the broader implications, consult your core principles, and if no law explicitly forbids it, dare to act. Start observing your decision-making process and those of others around you. See if you can spot instances of indecision. Please feel free to share your comments below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.